Lakshmi, tell me a little bit about yourself. What do you want people to know about you?
I actually grew up in Needham, so I'm a Needham native, which some of my newer to town people, I had never heard that term before, but that is what I am now known as, a Needham native. And I grew up here, and my mother actually opened a business here when I was 6 years old, and the store was called Peacock Feather. And it's no longer in town. It actually closed, I think, about almost 10 years ago now. But when I was growing up, and for people of that who've been in town for a long time, they would remember that it was a very unique children's gift store. It became a real destination for kids to go to for birthday parties. So we had a unique way of wrapping gifts. And so I grew up in it. So I grew up, I learned how to work even before we had a cash register. I was taking sales. I'd memorized the tax tables in my head. So that was what kind of how I grew up in Needham. I went away for college. I went to Chicago for college, and then I lived in California for a number of years. But I moved back. I ended up going to business school. I went to business school at MIT, and I started teaching. And so then I ended up getting my PhD. So I'm now a professor, and I study investment decision making. And so I ended up getting a job at Babson, which is right down the street. And so my husband and I had one baby at the time. We were expecting our second. And so we decided to move back to Needham to be close to Babson, but more importantly, to raise our family here.
You are a town meeting member for Precinct G.
I am.
This is your first term. And what made you quickly want to try the select board seat?
What I realized, frankly, from being on town meeting is that there's a lot of new people to this community. And by new people, I mean, not just, I'm new/old, but I feel I represent, more of the new generation of community members to Needham. And I felt, being on town meeting, that this population, kind of this generation, is not very well represented. And particularly so when it comes to the select board. And the select board, they've done great work. It is a great group of people, but they are overwhelmingly representative of one demographic. You will not really have the investment practices that represent a variety of interests if you only have one type of decision maker at the table. And so I really feel it's time to get, this perspective at the table. And I think I can do it. I've served on boards. I've been on a national board in entrepreneurship for a couple of years now. I'm an elected member. I serve on my faculty senate at Babson. So I've been on private boards. I'm on 2 boards of companies. So I'm very experienced at being a board member. I also think that the fact that the select board at the time when I decided to run, it wasn't going to be a contested race, right? So the 2 people that had been on the board for many years and done a great job, this is nothing about them. It's the fact that, that's not good for democracy when you have uncontested elections. Like, there needs to be a race, right? You need to get people energized, and you need to have people really show that this is who they want representing them.
What changes do you think Needham needs to meet those young generations' needs?
Oh, great question. I mean, first and foremost, one of the big changes that I would like to see, and if elected, I would really like to work hard at this, is frankly the transparency. I mentioned to you that one of the reasons I wanted to run is because I had no idea how local government works and what exactly, how are decisions made in terms of where our tax dollars go. And so I would love to put in place a process by which either we have transparency of what the government is doing and to get input as to what the government should be doing. Right now, it feels like there's a very small percentage of the town that has any voice or any representation, because those are the ones who vote, right? They're the ones who are on town meeting. And so we're not getting, people are busy. I'm busy. We're all busy. So it's hard to have that sort of involvement when, you've got kids and a job and you've got other things happening. But I think it's important to get people's, opinions and what their perspective and what changes they would like to see. So I would like to first and foremost get that. I think the other thing that's really important is that even though we have a lot of young families, a lot of families in town, a lot of the way we invest has not really addressed the needs of young families. We have a great school system, that's for sure, but there's still more in terms of community and green spaces and play spaces and where we decide to put money, that could be improved. I mean, my kind of concrete example that I've been using is something, in terms of playgrounds. And this is a frustration I experienced, is that we have no bathrooms for kids, right? There's no bathrooms at the playgrounds. And, that seems like a trivial matter, but when you're a parent, that's a really challenging situation. And one that, unless you experience it, you don't realize is necessary to address. So these are the types of things I would want to have be considered or be examined as to how we can address them. And, we spend a lot of money. This is a very wealthy community, and there's a lot of ways to change the, what we invest in, and also to incorporate the need for diversity, the need to address, frankly, socioeconomic diversity, not just race and certainly gender diversity, an area that I'm very interested in where my research has been.
Are there any other priorities on your agenda?
I think there's also, for me, as I mentioned, this issue of examining what are we investing in. And one of the things that disturb me, I guess, and when I think about investment and priorities and investment, what should we be putting money into, was the fact that at last year's town meeting, we approved purchasing, $60,000 worth of new guns for our police force. And, in my mind, it's like, this does not feel like a priority for this town. And specifically, as we think about investment, what are we doing for community infrastructure that could be better spent? Meaning, what are we doing to support local business? And what are we doing in terms of supporting the new families that are coming to town? And, we have, and now with the pandemic, right, what systems have we put in place to help businesses survive this is critically important. And as we grow, because, we know that, people want to live here. It is a great community. And we do need to think about, diversifying and keeping a robust and vital, community, and thinking about how do we address the needs of the entire population. So it's not just, one sliver that is getting all of their interests met, which is what it feels like currently.
I know you've mentioned your expertise in investment and entrepreneur, but I still want to ask, what are your strengths for this position?
I have a very deep history with Needham, first and foremost, right? I grew up here. I went to school here. So I'm very familiar with the school system, with the streets, right? The condition of the streets, the traffic, the local business community. I had a business in town. My family had a business in town. I also, I'm a teacher. So I'm very interested in, learning and really making sure that everyone gets to participate, right? So hearing people and their concerns and feedback is I'm very good at that. I also think that my lived experience, right, of being when I was growing up, I was the only Indian girl in this town, in the school system at that point. Another Indian girl actually came from India when I was in high school. So we were the only two Indian girls in the school. So, and I've been the only woman in the room when I worked in finance. So I've had that experience, but the ability to bring that perspective is critical for decision making, right? Having the diversity of perspective makes for better decisions. I'm also a mom of young children, so having the awareness of, what it's like to raise children in this town is something that also needs to be represented.